right? And it's the more that I love, and it's, it's all the things that we say, but truly, I have learned.
Hey players, welcome back to the Slaying Self Doubt YouTube channel. Here is where we empower Black women to overcome their doubts, fears, and insecurities in order to walk into their God given purpose. How do we do that, you ask? Well, we create safe and brave spaces just like this for Black women to show up authentically as themselves. So join me and sometimes some of my friends or our journey as we remind you that you are not alone. I am Coach Felicia, and together we will find our fears and sleep. Welcome back to another episode of Slaying Self Doubt Podcast. I am here with Ryane LeCesne from Inspire Brand Consulting. Hey, Ryan, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing really great, Felicia. Thank you. And thank you to your listening audience. I'm very excited to be here today.
Yes, first of all, even though it's spelled differently, right? My son and my husband's names are Ryan, so this right here is just
I love
it's
that. Oh my
it's
goodness.
definitely a connection here already.
Wow. Look at that. And my daughter's name is Ryan.
Oh, look at that. See, y'all,
Yes.
we already here. Y'all already know this is gonna be a great conversation. The Lord was like,
Wow.
I'm just go ahead and
Seriously. I'm just
and she just found this out right
off the
now.
top. I did just right now. I'm like totally taken aback. Like, wow, this is really divine. I
Yeah,
love that.
this is super cool. So
This
I'm excited about this conversation. And so how about you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got started?
Thank you. So what I do and who I am, I'm a mindset advancement coach. That's really how I would describe myself. I help people to, advance their mindset so that they can achieve particularly their professional dreams. How did I get there? So I normally would tell this story, and I will speed track to that story. That I in graduate school took a workshop with my first encounter ever with a coach, and she asked the question. It was a very intimate setting. It was, I think, 5 women, and she asked the question, do you speak to yourself as if you are your own best friend? And
Mm,
it was one of those questions that like hit me at my gut,
mm-hmm.
and I felt the emotion that Dr. Brene Brown describes as like a warm, oozy feeling where you just want to hide. That's called
Yeah.
shame.
Yeah.
Shame,
Yeah.
shame, shame. And I was like, no, I do not talk to myself that way. I don't know why I would talk to myself that way. How would you get anything done if you talk to yourself that way? But I also knew, like, whoa, this is like a divine resonance of how out of alignment you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, and I wouldn't have described it like that then,
Right.
but it registered as that, and it was very clear to me that I was on a quest to support, particularly Black women, high achieving, ambitious Black women,
Mm-hmm.
to get in alignment with the truth of who they are, which I call your brilliance.
Yeah.
And so it was that moment where Inspire became, it had already been LLC'd. It had already, I decided that I was going to do like, um, I called it at the time image consulting, was like
Okay.
what I could grasp.
Yeah.
And one of my best girlfriends was like, "Girl, you go way deep because you're like personal brand was like
Yeah.
the thing that was hot." This was 7, 8
Mm,
years ago. That was like the hot thing, I mean, like the
yeah.
new sort of way to describe it. And so what I so as of that day, that coach became my mentor. I took a career coaching class with her. She had also gone to Georgetown. This is where I was in graduate school. I just finished there with my master's. She had gone to Georgetown for their transformational leadership coaching certificate. So she was
Mm-hmm.
certified through them. I went back to Georgetown to get my certification. And the coaching business started from that point. Although I will say just yesterday, I had this very you know how you can get on your soapbox and talk in your mind like blah, 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 blah. I was like
Yeah.
talking to myself, and I was like, leaning into the fact that my business, in terms of the seeds, the seeds that have um, been germinated at this point, they started with my sorority. They started with
Mm,
Alpha Kappa Alpha being like, in my chapter, we are doing this thing for girls, like some vision for girls. We need an etiquette class. And my mom taught me etiquette from her mom. I mean, so personal branding came from my mom,
Yeah.
and I really flexed that muscle within the links. I was a young like 20-year-old person giving workshops to
Wow.
young girls around skincare because I had an aesthetic license. So I was doing this like in my 20s,
Yeah.
and so now at 43, 44, excuse me, 44, um it's literally like a tried and true business with a system. So
Mhm.
I'm an executive coach. I'm a entrepreneurial small business really strategist,
Mhm.
and that's how I got here. And that's been 7 years this year
Wow.
that I've been in business.
One of the things that you said that I really that resonates with me, and I'm sure with other entrepreneurs who've been on this episode, on this series, is that you don't realize how what you're doing and what, yeah, like when you create this business, that it was already in you, right? And it's these little seeds of things that, oh, I don't really know, like where some a lot of times we think, unless it's something like very specific, like you like, oh, I always knew I was going to be an artist or a singer or like you have these things that you've kind of, but I think when it comes to like coaching, it's one of those things that when people try to figure out like how'd you get here, it's like it truly is a journey, because when I started, I was kind of like, I don't necessarily know what that means. Like, what does coaching really look like? How am I, God gave me the phrase slaying self doubt. And I kept saying to myself, it didn't really dawn on me like what it was, and how I didn't realize that over the years, even as a teen, even as early 20s, that's what I was doing. I remember in my leadership career, we did this workshop one day. Somebody came and did like an in service or whatever, and we had to fill out this quiz to see what type of leader you were. And my leader method or whatever description was a coach. And I remember putting it up on my wall and kind of being like, oh, okay, like I'm coaching my team. But like now I can say, oh, that was already in you, right? Like you were, you, all of those things, the things that were in you from birth, that when the word says that God knows exactly who you are and that he has a plan and purpose, these are the things that are happening, that when you really are walking in purpose, those things start to come out of you naturally. And so I would just say, for those of you all listening, pay attention to the things that you've always done. It may not seem like it makes any sense, but when you are in this space of like, what am I supposed to be doing, or what is actually happening, you will be surprised at the fact that you've already been doing the work, right? And if you just rely on the things that you've already done, baby, you put that thing together, and there you go. That's who you are. And so I always think that I always want to figure out how people got here, because even sometimes in the conversation, like you said, like yesterday you thought of the fact that like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't something that was taught to me, this was in me, right? And I was doing it even when it wasn't a thing, right? And I would have it that regardless of whatever job you've had prior to this, you were doing the same thing. You were inspiring people and building their brands, personal brands, and giving them coaching along the way. We do it with our family, we do it with our friends, which is why we tend to be the I don't like it. I know it's still being used around. We tend to be the strong friend, right? Because we're able to take the pause and figure things out in our heads. And so people tend to like come, like, oh, so what do you think about blah? I remember back in the day, he's like, why do people keep talking to me? Like, I don't understand it. Like, why are they talking? You're shaking your head. So has that happened to you before, where you're like, I don't understand how I'm the person that seems to be the savior of the friend group?
I love it. I love it, Trisha. Exactly. I really want to echo exactly everything that you just said, and the intention with which I do believe it was a divine, like, you have this recollection and this connection for this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because, particularly with the title self doubt, because that's what we're talking about today,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Like
Uh-huh.
self
Yep.
all the self-doubt that prohibits us from making that internal connection of like standing with conviction of like, oh, right, of course I'm supposed to be doing this
Yes.
because all the breadcrumbs my whole life have said, this is who you are. This is who you
Mhm.
are. The fact is that for so much of my life and it's like okay because it's also part of the businesses the huge boulder that is the breadcrumb like
Mhm.
the self-doubt which in my language in my business is called imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and distractionism, and we'll dive deep into those. But those mindsets, which is essentially self-doubt,
Mhm.
all things fear, false evidence appearing real, it is worry, it is second guessing, it is
Yep.
overwhelm, it is distraction, it is like all the things that really prevent human beings. We're not broken. It is the fact that we have these emotions, and it is
Yeah.
the fact that we haven't been taught how to master our emotions and how to work with our emotions and work with our thoughts and our feelings that they take hold of us. So, your listening audience, I know the vast majority of them. We talked about who they are. They're bright, talented, aspiring, inspiring, mostly women, some men, of course, but people who have dreams.
Mhm.
And I believe that everybody not needs a side hustle. Like I don't even want to have that. Like you have to be grinding, grinding. I believe everybody has an entrepreneurial spirit. I
Mhm.
believe everybody has a gift of an offering that they can monetize,
Yeah.
whatever that is. And so my calling, and I believe your calling, is to help people believe in that thing, to
Yes.
literally overcome the self doubt,
Yeah.
because it is the self doubt that erodes the recognition and the like connection of, oh, right, I've been doing this for not 20 years, but I've been doing this since I was like at birth, my whole
Mhm.
training, both of my parents, both of even like the shadow and the light, like all of it is my business, all of it.
Mhm.
And it's the more that I love, and it's all the things that we say, but truly, I have learned along the journey, the more that I love myself, the more healed I am, the more I do my own
Yeah.
work, the more I expel these beliefs that I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy enough. Like my life is actually different. It
Yeah. Yeah.
feels different,
Yeah.
And so what you are saying, like, yes, everyone has a purpose and a passion. And how do we eradicate? And I don't mean, when I say eradicate, self doubt is going to be part of the process
Mhm.
because self
Mhm.
doubt is part of fear. It's how to like bump up against self doubt and
Yeah.
recognize, oh, that self doubt, that's not truth.
Yeah.
And I can learn to like pivot
Mhm.
away from
Mhm.
you, self doubt,
Right.
and continue down the journey. It doesn't mean I don't ever experience it anymore or
Yeah.
that it's not like, can it be overwhelming at times? It is mastering how to pivot. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad to talk about that conversation.
Yeah, no, it was I have maybe like 2 years ago. I was recording, probably doing a solo episode, if I remember correctly, and I'm talking about self doubt, and it hits me like right at that moment, like 2 years into doing this, I'm like, oh, slaying. I'm like, that's an action. It's not slayed self doubt. It is
Right.
slaying. And
Yes,
so
I
as I'm
see that.
talking, I'm like, oh, dude, like this is like you. I was like, the Lord knew, like, no matter what you're
Right.
doing, which is why I always say, like, when you see me, it's personal to me because I am slaying self doubt every single time that I show up in
Oh my
every
gosh.
single
Yes.
situation. That is what I'm doing. I got my sword out and I'm chopping it down. That doesn't mean it's gone. It doesn't
Girl,
mean that it
right.
goes away. It does it get quieter? It does, because
It does.
the
It does.
action is what the slang is, right? If I
Yes.
continue to say, oh, I'm not sure if I want to be able to do this, or I'm nervous about showing up in this space, the only way that you overcome is by doing, right? And so slaying is the doing, because the slang is the action. So yeah, this is definitely, see, the Lord knew we was supposed to be right
Right.
here.
Right.
And so speaking of
So fun.
self-doubt, how has self-doubt showed up in your journey?
So self-doubt I'm going to tell a very like current super real story that's just happened recently. So self-doubt was really a huge, so self-doubt as one of the symptoms,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
self-doubt, worry, um, they were, and again, I'm still a human being, so they are still things that I experience. However, up until a very recent experience I'm going to share, they were um, a prominent part of my lived experience.
Mhm.
Now, I had these are like big things and wanting to really like give context and language to. So, and again, I am a mindset person. So, what I know feelings are symptoms of.
Yep.
Feelings are symptoms of our beliefs, right? Our
Mhm.
thoughts, our beliefs are things that we hold true. They are facts to us.
Yeah.
They are like our lived experience, how we would internally articulate it. Our beliefs live in our subconscious mind. We're not
Mhm.
aware of them. All of these technicalities about beliefs. Beliefs have thoughts and they have feelings.
Mhm.
And so if you have a thought, you're going to have a subsequent feeling. So if you have a thought like I'm failing, I'm bad,
Mhm.
and that thought comes from a belief.
Yeah.
So we have to recognize if we have an echoing thought in our mind like I'm so bad, I'm so stupid, this is so okay, what I want you to understand is you believe that about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we have to get real with that. Conversation doesn't just come from nowhere, it comes
Correct.
from your belief.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I'm going to make a right hand turn right now because I believe that that's the way to the school. Like, it's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah.
the same. We don't articulate it that way. It doesn't feel good, but you
Mhm.
believe that, boo. You believe that about
Right.
yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Let's sit with that for a second. And you don't have to believe that about yourself. And I'm going to talk about how I self doubt. What does this mean? So, self doubt is a symptom of a thought, symptom
Yeah.
of a belief, right? It's the thing that we feel. I'm in self doubt. I feel overwhelmed. I feel nervous. I feel anxious, right? The
Mhm.
self doubt has an expression. And it's also paralyzing. It's also debilitating. It's
Mhm.
also crippling. It also shows up in your body
Yep.
as crippling over in your stomach, as heart palpitations,
Mhm.
as a headache, as like I can't breathe. This is all one body,
Mhm.
one experience that someone's
Mhm.
experienced because of a belief
Yep.
that they have that they're not even aware that they have because it's what they believe. It's like a fish
Correct.
in water. It's like
Yep.
so crazy, right? So now that we have the context laid, this is what happened to me. Now, again, I am in the work. I'm a believer. I have a coach. I've been working with her since the very beginning of my business. I am a proficient, excellent coach. I have people telling me one conversation has changed my life. Like I step into that, I own that, and I'm a human being.
Mhm.
So in my own journey, in October, this is the situation in October. In October, on October 10th, it's a Tuesday. I know that because I have coaching at 11:30 that day. I also in that evening have a presentation that I'm giving to a group of women. It's 50 women that is like my ideal audience,
Mhm.
right? So I'm like giving my signature talk. This is like a big deal. In the morning of that Tuesday, I have, as I shared, a coaching call with my coach. That's at 11:30. Prior to 11:30, same day on this Tuesday, October 10th of this year, last month, I am in a conversation with my husband, who is a very linear goal setting person.
Mhm.
I am a creative. I understand goals. I teach goals. I get goals. I have goals. I even have them written down. And I also am in a relationship with goals where it's not as linear, and this isn't in comparison, it's just on a scale as the person I'm communicating with.
Correct.
Okay. So he's talking about a specific goal um and his like what would you say, like his getting to the goal, like where he is in proximity to getting to
His
the goal.
process.
And
Yeah.
thank
Uh-huh.
you, like
Uh-huh.
where he is in process. And there's like he's at an obstacle and in the goal, and he's just like talking through it. And so in my mind, one, I'm noticing how linear he is and how the contrast.
Right.
I'm also noticing where my mind goes. My mind goes to, why would you have goals if the whole time getting to the goal you're failing? So I have this failure conversation that's happening in my mind, and it
Mm.
is like really intense. Failing, and I'm hearing it. Now I'm hearing it because again, I do the inner work where I'm like listening to myself, I'm listening to my
Right.
thoughts, I'm listening to like, oh wow, right now there's like a very prevalent failing conversation that's happening, and I'm exploring it, but I'm also in it. So
Right.
I also hear the other side of like, well, if you're gonna if life happens, you might as well, have goals and fail doing the things you want. Again, it's very fail
Yeah.
oriented. Even if
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can justify having a goal, I can
You're still
justify
having a
it's for
conversation of
right.
failure. Right. Right. Right.
Right. It's like deep, deep in this. So this is about 9 o'clock. So for about an hour and a half, I
Mm.
am really intensely in this conversation. Okay. So I get on the call with my coach at 11:30. And I say to her, it's a 90-minute call. I say to her, I want to spend 60 minutes on this presentation I have tonight. And I want to spend 30 minutes on my mindset, right? Because I just like when you get through that part so I
Mhm.
can get to this,
Mhm.
right? Okay, great. So where do you want to start? I want to start with I'm failing. I am failing, like everything. And I tell her exactly what I just told you, the whole context, right? The
Mhm.
day, and I'm failing. I mean, the marketing stuff is failing, it's failing. And I even get to I'm like, I am failing. Oh my God, I'm failing.
Mm.
And she does what coaches do. She did her coaching magic, which is really support me in recognizing, kind of holding me by the shoulders. You are the creator of this business. There is no failing in creation.
Yeah.
There is no failing. There is the only failure is you believing that you're a failure. That's the only failure. You are in process.
Mm.
And as long as you are in process, you're making progress.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
is this failing business about? And through this conversation, what wound up happening is I literally had, I'm calling it an exorcism because it was this expulsion of, oh my God. And I literally said, oh my God, I believe,
Mhm.
I believe like, that's what I I do actually, I've believed that my whole life. Oh my God. Like
Mm.
I can even see where at about, 8 years old, I agreed to that. Oh wow. There's evidence. Sure, I'm failing. This is what failure feels like. I am failing. It's like, what? I've lived my whole life with that echoing. You're failing, you're failing, you're failing. And so what
Yeah.
happened in that moment was because it now literally was outside of me. It was like
Mhm.
I was holding in my hands this belief of
Yeah.
and looking at it. Oh my God, I believed this my whole life that I am
Yeah.
failing. And for a moment, I had like this white noise experience. Now again, I'm in real time with a like a person's on the line with me.
Yeah.
I'm telling her, "Oh my God, I hear nothing in my mind. I hear nothing. And in the void, I almost don't know what to think because I'm
Mm.
looking around my office and I can see every single item used to be stamped with failure. The Amazon, all the stuff I haven't sent back, it screamed at me, "You're failing. You're failing. Look at you. You haven't sent it back. Look how this worked. Failing." Now it's just like stuff that's sitting there.
Mhm.
And it's no longer screaming at me. This beautiful water bottle that my sister-in-law got me that's actually helping me drink all this water. It used to 30 seconds ago scream at me, "You're not drinking your water. You're not drinking your water. You're not drinking your water." And now it's like silenced. And that's when the mantra and the practice of replacing you are failing with I am in process,
Mhm.
I am in progress. And from that moment, my life has been completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not to say, again, I haven't had these experiences because I'm gonna fast forward to exactly 7 days later and tell you another quick story. Um, However, there is not and continues to be, as you talked about, Felicia, there's like a quieting of the self-doubt. It's like
Mm-hmm.
actually different.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm different. My
Mm-hmm.
beingness is different. So what wound up happening, it was 60 minutes of mindset, 30 minutes, 30 minutes of presentation, right? 30 minutes of presentation. And what we talked about was making the presentation less teachery and more experience. So I had to, by the time I hung up with her, I had exactly 2 hours before I had to pick up my daughter and then present this thing that night. I needed to decrease it by 2/3
Mm.
and add another third in.
Yeah.
At the end of that call, I had this again, this your failing has been exercised out of me. However, I'm like walking on new legs. I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm thinking right now. I can
Yeah.
hear that that's like not quite the go-to,
Mm-hmm.
but I gotta do this presentation. I could feel like the self-doubt wanted to crawl in, and I was like, you know what? I want to close the computer. I can feel it, and I don't have this echoing anymore. I'm in process, I'm in progress, and I put that armor of God on, and I
Mm-hmm.
just did it. 50 women. I think it's now 17 of those women converted to discovery calls on my
Wow.
calendar.
Wow.
And so far, 3 of them have enrolled in my program and
Yeah.
still
Mm.
going through the discovery calls. I've never had a conversion rate like that before. I've had that group of women said, and I shared that story with them that night because it was, it was very relevant.
Yeah.
Like that changed my life. Oh my God. Like the belief, the imposters. I mean, it's walking in purpose
Yeah.
without the doubt, without,
Yeah.
and so 7 days later, maybe 10 days later, I sent a text to a group of friends and like I like to be a little bit ratchet, right? So I sent this kind of like
Ain't
ratchetly
nothing
text
wrong
to
with
my
that.
girlfriends, right? But then self doubt really came in. So I was like, oh no, maybe that was like too ratchet. And I like, oh God. And I
There's
got
never too much
really,
ratchet.
girl, I got really in it. And I felt it come on. And what she said, now this is the inner part of myself, you are so bad. You're so bad. And I could feel, I was like, oh, she's back.
Mm.
Oh,
Mhm.
she's back.
Mhm.
She's
Mhm.
back, right? Wow. And today the message is, you are so bad. And it was
Yeah.
like so emotional. I can still feel it,
Mhm.
the resonance of that. I picked up, it was like right at time to pick up my daughter. I picked up my daughter, went through the afternoon, and I could hear it. And what I knew was a new process. I am not, I'm sitting, I'm making new space for this. I'm hearing it. Thank God I needed to go to Costco that night. I by myself, push
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
buggy for like an hour. And I just really processed through like, wow, a belief is coming up. I'm
Mhm.
bumping up against it.
Mhm.
A part of me, literally a part of my flesh, believes I am so bad.
Yeah.
I agreed to that a long time ago. I can like see it. I can even see how I've lived my life by that. I grieved a little bit of that. And I also decided that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is not true. Like, look at who you are, you know?
Mhm.
And I share all that to say, like, I've had many of these moments and they're becoming exponential because of the work,
Yeah.
because of the inner work, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And since You're Bad was expelled, that now has been whatever today is, the 28th, I think, of November. There has been not a actually there was an anger one that came up, but
Mhm.
they're being expelled. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
different. I just could go on and on with stories, but I want to pause there. But those two are like, and the anger came out as well. But they're big process works. You
Yeah.
know.
So first of all, thank you for sharing that, right? Because I believe, well, we have several conversations on here about doing the work, right? And years ago I had a therapist on who shared that was talking about healing. And one of the things that she said was that, the hardest part, in order for us to get the peace that surpasses all understanding, is that you have to be willing to tell the truth. And sometimes telling the truth means to tell the truth about your parents, your upbringing, your spouse, how you lived your life. And most people are not willing to tell the truth. And so what you just shared was like you said, like we have adopted these thoughts. Maybe it came from somebody else, right? Maybe someone said something very slight. And because they said something very slight, now you've lived your whole life off of someone else's opinion of you, or and just one moment in your life, you've now carried that throughout your entire adulthood, right? And I felt it as you were saying it, because I think that when I started this journey, it was kind of like who am I to tell people that they should slay their self-doubt? Like, of all of the things I could think of, all the times that, so even though I didn't have the words for it at the time, where I was doubting myself, where fear showed up, and how am I the spokesperson for that? Like, why would you use me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're saying these different things, and now again, like you said, when these moments come up where I'm, because I know what it feels like in my body when the anxiety is like, oh, the ball is in my throat, and I'm like, what is wrong, right? I literally have to pause and say, what is it that you're afraid of? What is the thing that's scaring you, right? And talking it through. And even I have shared on here that a lot of my growth came from raising my kids. My oldest son had this one anxiety moment in Disney World in a line. And I remember just being so frustrated. Like, bruh, what is wrong with you? Like, we can't, I'm not gonna, we've been in this line for 2 hours. Now you talk about you gotta go to the bathroom as we're getting closer. Like, he's physically having this reaction and his fear to something. And I remember saying to him, like, dude, we would never put you in harm's way, right? Like, I would never ask you to do anything that would make you uncomfortable, to scare you, anything. Like when you're with us, you're safe. When you are, and it was like in that moment, the Lord was like, mm-hmm. So if I tell you to do something and you trust me, you're safe. Is it going to push you out of your comfort zone? Yes. But when you get to, and he rode the ride and he loved it. He wanted to get back in line. And I was like, now the line's 4 hours. No, we're not. Well, I'm definitely not getting back in line. But it was through that process that I started to pay attention to things of myself. So even I do it with my husband. I do it with so many other people. And now that I have accepted that this is my role as coach in everyone's life, even when I don't feel like it, right? I do it so often. So even yesterday, I picked my son up from swim practice, and he's having trouble diving, and it's just as simple as like, well, how's it going? And he was just like, he did. I could tell he didn't want to talk about it, but I was like, okay, but here's you're like, there's something, right, that's causing you. It's not physical, it's mental. What are you afraid of with the diving? Like, what's causing you to literally flinch your body up where you won't just go out straight? Like, dude, you can't keep, you know, what do they call it when you smack? Oh my gosh, you can't belly flop in the water at every race. Like, that's not going to work. Like, you gotta. And so I watched him, like in the beginning, I could tell he was annoyed with me because he was tired. But he was like, well, I mean, it's not my feet. I'm not afraid of, but he talked it through, and he was just kind of feeling like, he was like, I don't know. I think I just need more practice. Maybe I don't think I'm actually afraid of anything happening because I know I can do it. Maybe I'm just uncomfortable because I haven't done it in a while. And I said, okay, well, let your coach know that. And then maybe instead of you swimming, see if you can break up your practices where you spend half the time diving and the other half actually swimming, right? And so then he was like, okay. And so like you said, what you're saying in during this process is that we got to talk it through, right? So many times we just give into whatever the feeling is. Like, I'm so nervous, I'm just not going to do it. Well, guess what? It will show up in a different way. I always say, like, slaying self doubt is everywhere. It doesn't just happen in my business. It doesn't just, it happens in my marriage. It happens in my parenting. It happens in my finances, in my health. If I don't believe that I'm going to lose weight, I'm not going to have the motivation, dedication, or consistency to keep going to the gym, or to keep, we both talk about water, keep drinking my water, right? Or doing it because I don't believe I can do it. And to have to say that to yourself is like, whoa, like you wouldn't tell anybody else, I don't believe you can lose the weight, right? You'd be like, well, sheesh. But we are quietly telling ourselves that, and we are saying it by how we live out our lives, right? And in order for us to get to that place where that's no longer the truth, you gotta look in the mirror and be able to go through the uncomfortableness of like, okay, why don't I think I can? And here's the thing, it's like it's very small stuff, right? It doesn't have, a lot of times we think it's really, really big things. Like even when you were saying like the failure part, like what is it about it? Like what do you think? And I don't, there are probably so many stories that we've told ourselves, and the movie that's playing in our head over and over again, or the thing that we've added. I shared this before, that Brene Brown shared this story about the husband. I'm going to Google it. I know it because I wasn't thinking of it ahead of time to know it all. But basically, they are at like their beach house or something. They go swimming in the lake, and she wants to go swim. The husband doesn't want to go swim, and she's like having this whole. He doesn't like the way I look. He doesn't this, that, and the third. And she says she finally just says like, what's wrong? Like, what don't you like about this, that, and the third? And he shares that, no, the last time I was in here, our kids almost drowned, and I'm afraid to get back in the water. And we made it about ourselves, even though it had, but that's the story. Now you think about how long she was having this thought process that her husband didn't want her, but it was really that he was afraid of, like it was so many different things, but it's like that thing of like, you said this thing, but now I've added to it, right? Like someone says no, and now we're like, well, they don't want to do it because they don't think I'm qualified. They don't want to hire me because I don't have the degrees, or they don't want me to cook because of blah, blah. And it's like, nah, I don't have the capacity. We don't have any more, we filled up all of our vacancies. Like it's just so many other things, but whatever we're telling ourselves, that is what continues to feed the self-doubt beast, right? And in that moment when you told the truth and you went through that whole thing of like, dude, like I actually believe that I'm a failure. Even though all the evidence around me says otherwise, I believe I'm failing. That is something that's within me, which also means, how am I displaying this in my marriage? How am I displaying this and even you said like in your coaching, right? Like in your work, if you think you're failing, that's how you show up, which is the reason why people don't believe you, which is the reason why when you're doing stuff, it's like, why isn't things converting? Because you don't think it's going to convert. And so you are leading with hesitation. You ain't saying it, but your emotions, your body, like you're leading with like, oh, this ain't even gonna work, but you're faking. You faking the whole time, just like I'm gonna just show up to show up, versus like, no, I don't believe that anymore. Whatever happens is going to happen. And I like what your coach said, like you're in process, and you're in your process is progressing. Like we don't know what failure looks like because it's the first time we are doing it, or it's even being done, right? No one else knows what slaying self-doubt is supposed to be except for the Lord above. So how do I know if I'm failing? I have no idea. As long as he keeps giving me clients, he keeps giving me interviews, I'm progressing as far as I'm concerned. I ain't where I was. Like I'm moving closer to something. You know what I mean? Like I'm not sure what it is, but I'm moving closer to something. Um, but I thank you for sharing that, because that definitely was something that I think the audience needs to hear. Like we have to take the time to tell the truth for ourselves, for the betterment of the people around us, because we don't realize how we're operating and how we are showing up. You mentioned it really quickly, and y'all, this be the reason why the Lord be knowing who I need to connect with, but we on a time constraint, and so we're gonna get through this really quickly. Okay, so I want to know what you've learned about yourself during this journey that you didn't know before.
Yeah, so I think the thing that I learned about myself is truly, I would have to say the divinity within me is the thing
Mm,
that I've really learned about myself. And I say that because, you know, I've talked a lot about, sharing my story and my own sort of mindset shifts.
mm-hmm,
And I share that because what I experience is exactly what I help people to experience, right? And so I have a process that helps people to do that, to have their own sort of exorcisms of their
mm-hmm,
beliefs. And we don't often talk about um, our own journeys as practitioners, because
mm-hmm,
sometimes it can feel like, well, if I share my journey, then is it in contradiction to my
mm,
expertise,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
But the thing is that I my expertise is helping people heal.
Yeah.
And that is through coaching. That's like my divinity.
Yep.
And it is just like you said, it is yours as well. And
Mm-hmm.
then there is this humanity that we're surrounded in that says, are you good enough to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Can you
Mm-hmm.
really do that?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have, and that makes the journey difficult, right?
Correct. Correct.
And so it's about learning to let go of that and embracing your divinity.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something, I think that embracing that divinity is something that I'm consistently and constantly like embracing, and that letting go of self-doubt, of the fear is also something that I'm really, it's like a both and,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And I encourage people who are listening, who are in that, toe dipping, or like, should I lean into my purpose? But what about what if? That conversation will be quieted as you do your work. And
Yeah.
there are people like Felicia, like myself, who are here to support you in the process
Yep.
of
Yep.
doing that work,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so important to do your process.
Yeah.
Nobody just gets there through an anointing. We have to go through the valley,
Yeah. We have to go through it. Yeah. I think it's I mean, ultimately, it's a like that's one of the pillars of slaying self-doubt is action, right? Like you gotta go through the journey, but you can't like there's so many it is layers to it, right? But a portion of that is doing the work, right? We just assume that, oh, I'm just gonna, slay myself down and that's going no, you don't again, like I said earlier, it's slaying. Like you gotta be moving and it's not past tense, it's not it is an action. You have to continue like you're moving forward as you're going through life, just chopping it down. And they're gonna get bigger, smaller. Some you won't be able to walk over like I already did that. I'm not worried about that, right? That's why I tell people to keep track of your wins, right? Because that's also your reminder of what you've already done. So when you are in those moments of like, ah man, I'm not sure, I have this list. I can look at it and be like, oh yeah, but you've done it already 4 times. So girl, take that energy and keep it moving, right?
That's right.
And so really quickly before we go, um I want to know about your brand, what it is that what you do, if the listeners want to work with you, how can they, what do you offer? There we go.
Yeah, absolutely. So absolutely. So I in terms of who I specifically work with, my
Mm-hmm.
practice is centered around high achieving Black women who want to advance their professional dreams, whether that is to move up within their organization, or whether that is to start, scale a small business. And what I have found in my 7 years of practice is that high achieving women, because they're also human beings, can be riddled with self-doubt. They can be
Mhm.
riddled with imposter syndrome, riddled with this idea of, if I'm not perfect, if I'm not right, if I'm not completely done, if the business plan isn't finished, if I don't exactly know the answer, I can't raise my hand, I can't go for the
Yep,
opportunity,
yep.
and that holds us hostage. And so I have
Facts.
created an 8-step process that helps people to have that transformation where they are closing their confidence gaps, where they are, living in their personal brand, and what I call really living their brilliance.
Mhm.
And so I support people, make that, have that journey, create that journey for themselves. And if someone's interested in working with me, you can, certainly, I would love to connect with you one on one through a discovery call that you can find on my website, which is www.inspirebrandconsulting.com. You can find all my social media there as well. Just click through. There's all kinds of videos, Instagram, YouTube, everything is there, along with that discovery call that's complimentary.
Yes, thank you. So y'all already know it's going to be in the show notes, so don't even worry about right now trying to figure out what she say. Don't worry about it. Just go into the show notes and then click it, and y'all will be able to you'll see it there. Um, Ryan, thank you so much. I just
Thank you.
appreciate your transparency. I appreciate your truthfulness and just like sharing with us. Generally, I always say that like every conversation that I have with a guest is intentional, it's on purpose, and the Lord knows that this conversation needs to happen. You asked me in the beginning, like, how long does it? And I said, however the Spirit moves us, that's the way we're going to go, right? And I believe that um whoever is listening today needed to hear what you had to say because someone is telling themselves the same thing. And so it may not be the exact same story or lie, because it's a lie. All right.
Mhm. It
They
is
may
a
not
lie.
be telling themselves the exact same lie, but that the conversation we just had is going to resonate with them, that they are repeating something over and over to themselves subconsciously, maybe even out loud. I have no idea, right? And this is what they needed to hear to be able to jumpstart them, really like taking the next step in their life and leveling up. And so, we both have offerings. And so if you want to work with myself or Ryan, like we are here to support you. And so y'all know how to get in contact with me. I'm gonna put it in the show notes how to get in contact with her. Thank you so much, Ryan. I hope you have a
Thank
great
you.
day. As always, y'all, thank you for rocking with me. Again, if you enjoyed this podcast and you find it valuable, you enjoy this channel and you find it valuable, please consider donating by buying me a coffee. Your support will help me to create new content, get an official podcast studio, and ultimately reach more people. That's what we need. We need more people on this movement. Okay. If you're not already signed up to the newsletter, go to my website, www.slayingselfdoubt.com, and sign up for the Slayer Nation newsletter. That's where you'll get updates, where you'll get what's going on. You'll get the news first. You don't have to wait until I announce it or hear. Okay. And lastly, second to last, please make sure that you share this with at least 10 people. We are trying to reach 100,000 downloads this year, and every subscription, every share counts. So we need it. We need you to send it out to your peoples so they can help us hit our goal this year. Lastly, if you are not already following me on Instagram, you need to go on over there and follow me at Slaying Self Doubt. Until the next episode, see ya.